Whitney Houston was because she was no longer of value to the music company that owned her. Whitney Houston was no longer of value to the music company that owned her. Whitney Houston was Michael Jackson was because he was no longer of value to his company. He owned half of the Beatles catalog. He did not plan on selling it.
I own half of Sony's publishing and I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me. And Tommy Mottola is a devil.
That's industry trick number one. Guess who was the first person to do that? Clive Davis. Clive Davis does that a lot. And I tell you what, if y'all actually care about what happened to Whitney Houston and Bobby Christina and Nick Gordon, all dead within years of each other.
And that's what Michael was going through. And he knew that everything that was happening to him was not kosher, it wasn't right. And it disturbed him greatly. And he kept saying it over and over and over again. Yes, Dr. Murray was the fall guy, but it's more to it than just that. He named names. He told me people. He told me to be careful of this one and that one.
Dr. Umar is standing 10 toes down on exposing the real truth about what happened to Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston. And he's pointing the finger at MJ and Whitney's record labels, alleging that they orchestrated their deaths because they dared to stand up for themselves and tried to regain control of their music catalogs. Now, this idea that some music artists are worth more dead than alive has been around for a while, with many pointing to Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, and Prince as prime examples. These artists fought their labels for more control over their publishing, only to pass away under mysterious circumstances, generating even more money for their labels after their deaths. But Dr. Umar took this theory further, claiming that Michael Jackson's white son conspired to prevent MJ's mother from accessing his wealth after his passing. And according to Umar, this is all a part of a bigger scheme where black artists are manipulated and controlled by those who actually hold the power within the music and entertainment industries.
It had to be somebody with a lot of power. I believe it was somebody from Whitney Houston's label. And I believe that somebody allowed the Grammy party to continue while Whitney Houston's body was upstairs dead and floating in the tub.
Now, let me first give you some background on how MJ and Whitney got in trouble with their labels before their sudden deaths. In Michael Jackson's case, he had a bitter feud with Sony for years, and he openly challenged the company by first acquiring half of their catalog and then leaving to become a free agent. MJ even went so far as to hold up a sign on stage saying, "Sony kills." And he called the then CEO of Sony, Tommy Mottola, the devil.
At Sony, I've generated several $1 billion for Sony. Several billion. And they really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing, and it usually is, but they never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them.
Yeah.
I own half of Sony's publishing, and I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me because of it. But I just did good business, you know. And Tommy Mottola is a devil.
Now, here's where things get really sketchy. So remember that lawsuit Lil Rod filed against Diddy back in February under the RICO Act? Well, in the lawsuit, Lil Rod alleges that Diddy's head of security, Fahim Muhammad, had strong ties with law enforcement and played a key role in helping Diddy cover up his alleged crimes. The lawsuit states, Mr. Combs made it clear that his head of security, Fahim Muhammad, had the power to make people and problems disappear. Mr. Combs instructs his staff to always contact Mr. Muhammad if they ever are pulled over by the police in Miami or California. The lawsuit also claims that Diddy's powerful industry buddies employed and empowered Fahim to pay off law enforcement. So who is this Fahim guy anyway? Well, get this. It turns out that Fahim was also Michael Jackson's head of security and was one of the first people present at the scene when MJ died, alongside MJ's doctor, Conrad Murray. And here's the kicker. When Fahim testified during Dr. Murray's trial, he revealed that he had been hired as MJ's chief of security just 10 months before MJ's death.
June of 2009, at that point in time, how long had you worked security for Mr. Jackson?
Approximately 10 months.
And what were your responsibilities?
I was the chief of his security, so my responsibilities ranged from making sure his house was protected, making sure his children were protected, and making sure his day-to-day activities and movement was all safe and planned and mapped out.
But here's another crazy twist. Turns out Fahim had just graduated college with a business degree and was only 20 or 21 when he was hired as MJ's head of security. So are we really supposed to believe that the king of pop chose a 20-year-old kid straight out of college and with no experience to be his chief of security? Well, not exactly. According to independent journalist Ian Carroll, who recently went viral for digging into the connection between Diddy and Michael Jackson, it's possible that someone else hired Fahim on MJ's behalf, just like they allegedly did with Dr. Conrad Murray.
For most of Jackson's career, his head of security was Bill Bray, who was his mentor and basically his father. And the two were extremely close. Bill ran his security until he was 70 when he retired, and Jackson continued to pay his medical bills until he died at age 80. But then once Bill retired, Jackson was then protected by other security people that came and went, and he wound up with this guy who has direct connections to Diddy's blackmail operations, who was directly complicit in covering up crimes for Diddy and covering up drugs and human. This is the guy that was protecting Michael Jackson the day that he died, the day that he was overdosed on after he was probably already asleep, and the only witnesses, there were no witnesses to the crime. I'm honestly kind of surprised that this guy never got checked into as a suspect.
Ian also suggested that Fahim might have connections to intelligence agencies, and fans are now speculating that he could be another one of those celebrity handlers like Kanye's former personal trainer, Harley Pasternak.
I was looking up Fahim, and where did I find another article about him? On Penn State, the Wharton School. He didn't attend it as a student. He was invited as a speaker for this Wharton real estate entrepreneurship event, which makes perfect sense. He has a real estate investment company or whatever, but if you've been following along, you would know that the Wharton School comes up an awful lot when we're talking about intelligence agencies and people associated with the CIA and the FBI, etc. Just thought it was interesting that they invited him to be a honored speaker at their event. And now, here's the best part. Check this out. This is in all of his bios, by the way, but we're pointing it out now. In 2008, Fahim graduated from Sacramento State University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Administration with a concentration in real estate and marketing. Okay? Do you realize what's wrong with that yet? Anything coming to mind? When did Michael Jackson die? June 25th, 2009, Jackson died from cardiac arrest caused by a propofol and benzodiazepine overdose, caused by his doctor apparently. Hold up, hold the phone, pause. Why is a dude who just graduated college last year with a business and real estate degree the head of security for the king of pop, for Michael Jackson, the most famous musician of all time? What's going on? Don't you think that's a little weird?
So if MJ didn't personally hire Dr. Murray and Fahim Muhammad, who did? Well, according to multiple industry insiders, Sony and AEJ Live, the promoter for MJ's final tour, conspired together to take him out. And this theory didn't just come out of thin air. According to Michael's sister LaToya, Michael himself knew he was a target, and he told his family they would try to kill him for his catalog.
And he knew that everything that was happening to him was not kosher, it wasn't right, and it disturbed him greatly. And he kept saying it over and over and over again. Yes, Dr. Murray was the fall guy, but it's more to it than just that. He named names. He told me people. He told me to be careful of this one and that one.
The theory gained even more attention when The Sun published notes supposedly written by Michael in the weeks before his death. These notes included alarming phrases like, "They are trying to," and "The system wants to for my catalog." And in one note, MJ also expressed feeling pressured by AEG and having a bad feeling about his tour. And then, a few years later, MJ's daughter Paris appeared to be pointing the finger at Sony and John Branca, the co-executor of the Michael Jackson estate. Paris showed support by liking a series of tweets criticizing Sony and Branca, including one that read, "We've been telling you the truth for 7 effing years. Shame on any of you who sided with Michael Jackson's murder." Now let's switch gears and talk about the late great Whitney Houston, because she also reportedly challenged her record label and her longtime mentor Clive Davis shortly before her mysterious death on Grammy night in February 2012. Clive Davis may be one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the music industry, but his health and success have been overshadowed by disturbing rumors, including those that suggest he may have sacrificed multiple legendary artists for his fortune, with one of course being Whitney Houston. For many years, many industry insiders have been trying to bring attention to the suspicious circumstances surrounding Whitney's death, urging the police to reopen the case, but without success. And this is because there are so many inconsistencies in the official accounts of her death that it's hard not to question the narrative we've been given. For context, Whitney was found face down in a water-filled bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel on February 11, 2012. Initial reports claimed she died from accidental drowning caused by a heart attack and intoxication, but the report also noted that Whitney had multiple marks and abrasions on her face and body. According to forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht, these findings suggest that Whitney probably died under very different circumstances than what we've been told. Wecht also highlighted that the water in Whitney's bathtub that night was extremely hot enough to cause serious burns. Wecht told ABC News, "I think that she fell into this very hot water. That accounts for a little bruise that was seen in the left forehead area. Some other pressure markings on the face, including the slight laceration of the lip and the fact that she is lying face down. I think that this lady fell into the water. She was unconscious, dead, or dying when she fell into the tub. I do not believe that the death was due to drowning." The pathologist's observations also align with what Jaguar Wright previously asserted about Whitney supposedly having marks indicating a physical altercation on her body.
She was beat. They saw her body. She didn't just die in a tub, like she was beat up.
And then, private investigator Paul Hubble also stepped forward with a similar account, claiming that Whitney had classic defensive marks on her body. Hubble, a former police officer who has investigated other high-profile celebrity OD cases and suspicious deaths, alleged that Whitney may have been attacked by someone who provided her with substances that night. In fact, Hubble said that Whitney had so many marks on her body that it looked as though she'd been in a boxing match. Call this an accident if you want, but it doesn't make sense to me, Hubble added. But that's not all. According to Hubble, he was informed that there was CCTV footage from the Beverly Hilton Hotel showing two men entering Whitney's hotel suite on that fateful night. Hubble stated that he actually brought his findings to the FBI, but nothing was done. When asked why the Beverly Hills police didn't act on the alleged CCTV footage, Hubble claimed that the police and coroner were happy to sweep Whitney's death under the rug, calling it accidental and closing their investigation. Oh, and let's not overlook that infamous video of Whitney interrupting an interview with Clive Davis, Brandy, and Monica just 2 days before she died and passing a mysterious note to Brandy. This is honestly so sinister because it seems like both Michael Jackson and Whitney knew their lives were at risk and they tried to alert those around them. Sadly, the people around them were probably paid by the very individuals who allegedly had a stake in getting rid of MJ and Whitney and gaining control of their music catalogs. And now Dr. Umar has decided to join the chat and add his 2 cents, claiming that both MJ and Whitney were taken out because they challenged their record labels and the labels knew that they were worth more dead than alive. And while Dr. Umar didn't name any names, he definitely alluded to Clive Davis, suggesting that Clive was involved in Whitney's sacrifice, which is why he allowed that Grammy party to go on with Whitney's dead body in the same building.
And speaking of Whitney Houston, you feel like she was...
Yes. Whitney Houston was because she was no longer of value to the music company that owned her. Whitney Houston was no longer of value to the music company that owned her. Whitney Houston wanted her masters, she wanted her publishing, she wanted an audit on her money, and she was not going to get it. Here's the question that got to be asked. You're at the Los Angeles Hilton, I believe. That's a 5-star hotel. There's cameras on every floor. Whoever went into Whitney Houston's hotel room to take her life, it's on camera. Who had the power to tell the owners of the Los Angeles Hilton or Las Vegas Hilton, I think it was Los Angeles, who had the power to make them confiscate that Whitney Houston video showing them entering the room? It had to be somebody with a lot of power. I believe it was somebody from Whitney Houston's label. And I believe that somebody allowed the Grammy party to continue while Whitney Houston's body was upstairs dead and floating in the tub.
As for Michael Jackson, Dr. Umar pointed out how MJ outsmarted Sony by acquiring half their catalog, and they couldn't stand that he beat them at their own game.
Michael Jackson was, because he was no longer of value to his company. He owned half of the Beatles catalog. He did not plan on selling it. The reason he was going to go on tour was to make enough money to satisfy the debt that his music company put him into, and he was put into that debt with his Invincible album. They sabotaged the Invincible album on purpose, putting Michael Jackson into debt so he'd have to give them back the Beatles catalog. Owning the Beatles catalog basically made Michael Jackson 50% owner of that music company, and they hated him for it. How dare you manipulate your way with your economic genius, Michael Jackson? With your economic genius, how dare you manipulate your way into 50% ownership of the most powerful music company in the world? They Michael Jackson. He should have never come back to the LA Staples Center to practice for those concerts. He was living with his brother in Dubai. He should have stayed in the Middle East.
Umar also claimed that the FBI may have also been involved in these alleged of legendary black artists. And according to Umar, it all comes down to money and control.
Michael Jackson is my all-time favorite recording artist. Tupac Shakur is my all-time favorite rapper. Whitney Houston is my all-time favorite female vocalist. And all three were by the music industry with complicity from the white power structure and the FBI. Prince was because Prince didn't want to turn over his unpublished music to that record label, and they manipulated him into this agreement that basically said, if you let us remaster the 25th anniversary Purple Rain album, if you let us remaster the 25th anniversary Purple Rain album, we're going to give you back all your publishing. That was nothing but a setup for a takeout. He never got the publishing back, or they might have gave it back to him, but soon thereafter, he ended up dead. And from what I last heard, that same company that Prince, they now have most of his unpublished music. And you do know that Michael Jackson's estate sold a sizable portion of Michael Jackson's catalog back to the company that Michael Jackson.
And then Dr. Umar went a step further, alleging that Michael's, quote, fake Caucasian son, end quote, Prince Jackson, is loyal to the same people who allegedly took MJ out.
And on that Michael Jackson note, did you just see how his so-called son, the white boy Prince Michael, is not willing to give Mother Jackson, Michael Jackson's mother, needs some money, and Michael Jackson's fake Asian son won't give his black grandmother any of his so-called father's money. That's happening right now.
You for real?
Yes, the white boy won't give his Michael Jackson's mother no money. They in court right now.
Now, I want to point out that Dr. Umar got this wrong because it's not actually Prince, but Blanket, MJ's youngest son, who objected to Michael's estate paying for Catherine Jackson's legal bills. Catherine is currently involved in a legal battle for access to funds from Michael's estate. But Michael's youngest son, BG, better known by his name Blanket, filed court documents to prevent Catherine from using his father's estate to cover her legal fees related to an ongoing undisclosed legal dispute. But then Catherine submitted a response to Blanket's filing back in March, arguing that the executors of MJ's estate have sufficient funds to cover her $500,000 worth of legal fees, and therefore should do so. But Catherine is not a beneficiary of Michael's main estate. She is of a separate trust, so MJ's son Blanket argued that she shouldn't be allowed to use any more money from his estate because she already receives a 7-figure yearly allowance. Either way, this whole thing is a huge mess, and it's sad to see how some people would do anything for money, even if it means going against their own flesh and blood. But now I want to hear how you feel about Dr. Umar's comments on Michael and Whitney's passing. Do you think they were really taken out by their labels and people who wanted to gain control of their catalogs? Comment down below and don't miss out on this next video.